Have you ever stopped to think about what happens when a massive billion-dollar deal or even a life-saving medical diagnosis completely hinges on a single translated word? It's intense, right? Today, we're diving into this explainer to unpack a seriously fascinating document, the Silva Languages Training Script. We're going to explore a concept that's basically the absolute bedrock of professional multilingual communication. It's the strict, super high-stakes standard known as verbatim interpreting. So if you've ever wondered how global businesses or legal teams manage to communicate flawlessly across language barriers without losing those really critical nuances, well, you're in exactly the right place. We're going to see exactly how this invisible shield of word-for-word accuracy actually works.
Okay, so here's our game plan for today. First, defining verbatim interpreting. 2, why exact words matter. 3, crossing the invisible line. 4, tools for perfect precision. And finally, number 5, the Silva Languages Standard.
Let's jump right into Section 1, defining verbatim interpreting, the core principle. Right off the bat, according to the Silva Languages script, verbatim interpreting means delivering the message exactly as spoken. Now, I know that sounds pretty straightforward on the surface, but the cognitive load behind actually doing this, it's massive. You really have to think of the interpreter not just as a translator, but as a completely flawless mirror. Their main job is to be a perfect conduit. That means they absolutely have to preserve the speaker's exact intent, the complex structure of their ideas, the specific register they're using, and literally every single detail. This strict rule is the only way to guarantee that everyone sitting in that room gets the exact same information, down to the syllable as the original speaker intended. You know, as humans, when we hear someone say something that's maybe a bit harsh, super confusing, or just dragging on too long, our natural instinct is to kind of smooth it out, right? We want to summarize it or soften the blow. But in professional verbatim interpreting, that instinct has to be totally shut off. The message is not summarized, it is not softened, and it is not adjusted. Period. The interpreter isn't there to be an editor or a diplomat. Like I said earlier, they are a precise mirror. To pull this off and preserve that exact message, an interpreter is capturing a few very specific things. First up is the speaker's intent. If the person speaking is being sarcastic or maybe a bit hesitant, that exact vibe has to survive the translation. Then there's the structure of ideas. You can't just rearrange their logic because it's easier to say. Register is another big one. If a tech expert is throwing around highly formal jargon, the interpreter matches it. If they use casual slang, well, the interpreter can't suddenly start sounding like a Shakespearean actor. And finally, the granular details. Names, numbers, qualifiers, every little piece absolutely matters. Moving on to Section 2, why exact words matter, the high stakes. Because in professional settings, this level of accuracy isn't just nice to have, it's an absolute shield. The training script points out some really critical, compliance-sensitive environments where verbatim interpreting literally protects the organizations involved. We're talking about HR and disciplinary meetings where a single misunderstood phrase could easily trigger a lawsuit. Or medical settings, right? Imagine a mistranslated symptom. That could completely alter a diagnosis. And of course, executive sessions where massive financial commitments are being put on the record. The difference between exact and altered phrasing can honestly be catastrophic. Just think about it. Changing a phrase like, I might do that, to, I will do that, completely distorts a legal commitment. Exact phrasing creates this bulletproof historical record and locks in the original intent. When decisions are reviewed months or even years down the line, that precise wording is literally all that matters. Even slightly altered phrasing causes these massive misunderstandings that can ruin that historical record forever. Which brings us to Section 3, crossing the invisible line, what to avoid. So to maintain this super strict neutrality, interpreters basically have a do not do this checklist. It's crucial. They must absolutely avoid summarizing the message just to save a little time. They can't soften the tone of a frustrated speaker to make things less awkward. And get this, they can never directly answer a participant's question on behalf of the speaker, even if the answer is super obvious and the interpreter totally knows it. No adding their own helpful explanations, and they definitely do not try to manage participant behavior. Doing any of that distorts the message and dangerously crosses the professional boundaries of their role. They have to remain this invisible, strictly neutral presence in the room. All right, Section 4, tools for perfect precision, how it's done. So how in the world do they actually pull this off in real time? It's honestly an incredible mental tightrope walk. Step one is active listening, but listening for both meaning and structure at the exact same time. Step two is rendering that message completely neutrally, which means leaving absolutely all personal bias at the door. And step three is maintaining that exact register we talked about earlier. And they do this systematically, executing this loop over and over again for the entire meeting. But let's be real, nobody's memory is a limitless hard drive. Effective verbatim interpreting does not rely on pure memory alone. The script highlights that interpreters strategically use brief, targeted notes. They do this specifically for those hyper-specific details, proper names, complex numbers, or specific sequences of steps. These notes basically act as a real-time scaffolding because, mixing up a million with a billion or swapping the order of steps in a medical procedure, that is simply not an option. But what happens when things just go too fast, or maybe the audio drops out, or a phrase is just completely ambiguous? The ultimate fail-safe here is actually pretty straightforward. If clarity is lost, the interpreter does not guess, ever. Instead, they professionally step in and just ask for repetition or clarification. It's always, always better to briefly pause the meeting to make sure you have it exactly right, rather than letting a distorted message slip into the historical record. And that leads us perfectly into Section 5. The Silva Languages Standard. Conclusion. The Silva Languages script basically takes all of these rules and codifies them into one ultimate operational standard. The core philosophy goes like this. This standard protects clients, participants, and interpreters by maintaining clear boundaries and delivering precise communication. Think of it as a triangle of protection, built entirely on these precise boundaries. By sticking to a strict verbatim protocol, interpreters build this unwavering trust in professionalism. The client is protected from liability, the participant is protected from a misunderstanding, and the interpreter is protected because they are operating clearly, safely, within their scope. So I'm going to leave you with this final kind of provocative thought to ponder. In these high-stakes professional environments, if you change even a single word to soften the blow, whose truth are you really telling? Is it the speaker's, or is it your own? It really highlights the immense power, the heavy responsibility, and honestly, the absolute necessity of total neutrality in verbatim interpreting. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I will catch you in the next one.